My name is Mira Ashcombe, and the last time my sister humiliated me in public, she did it with a smile, a champagne flute, and a whisper meant to cut. It was the Glenhaven Media Foundation Gala. Velvet drapes, $500 plates, and too many people pretending to care about causes they didn't understand. Chloe, my younger sister, had invited me at the last minute, like an afterthought she couldn't quite ignore. I accepted, knowing full well what I was walking into. She saw me walk in and gave that little smirk of hers. Not malicious, just condescending. Dressed head to toe in a label she couldn't afford without financing, surrounded by junior execs who laughed too easily at her jokes. "Oh, that's just my sister," she said, waving a dismissive hand as I approached. "She's doing her own thing. Freelancer or something like that. Always off the grid." There it was. Polite ridicule, dipped in civility. I stood there, holding my glass, letting them laugh, letting her feel in control. Until a voice behind her said, "Miss Ashcombe, I didn't realize you'd be attending." Chloe turned. So did the table. It was her boss, Carter Hartley, Chief Strategy Officer of Colburn Media Group. He reached for my hand. "You didn't tell me your sister is Mira Ashcombe," he said slowly. "We work for her." The air left the room. Chloe's face froze. And I smiled, for the first time that night. Chloe was always the dazzling one, the golden girl. From the moment she learned how to walk in heels and speak with a sugary voice, the world bent slightly to make room for her. Or maybe it was our parents who paved the way, always making sure she got the best of everything. Dance lessons, modeling gigs, a private college with a major in media communications that she never fully understood, but always talked about with flair. I was the opposite. Quiet, curious. I preferred questions to answers, books to people. I learned to code when I was 13, started building backend tools by 16, and sold my first data mining script at 17. Anonymously, of course. At dinner, no one asked me what I was working on. They asked Chloe what color she'd paint her nails next, and somehow I got used to that. When our parents died in a car accident, I was 25, Chloe was 22. The will had been rewritten while I was away on a consulting job in Hong Kong. I remember reading the letter from the family lawyer. The house, the vacation condo, and most of the liquid assets were left to Chloe. I was granted a generous stipend and a request to continue pursuing my independent lifestyle. It was never said out loud, but it was clear. I wasn't the daughter who showed up for brunch or posed in family photos. I was the shadow in the corner of every frame, cropped out by choice. I didn't contest it. I didn't cry. I took the stipend, invested it into a project I'd been prototyping quietly. A cybersecurity layer for internal investment firms, wrapped inside a machine learning interface that read breach signals faster than anything else on the market. I named the company Ashcombe Dynamics, never once putting my name forward publicly, but always owning it on paper. In the years that followed, I lived lean, worked nights, and kept silent. I learned the language of contracts and ghost boards. My company was absorbed into a holding firm, which I also controlled. Then another. Then a trust. Layer after layer, like armor. Like silence made tangible. Meanwhile, Chloe's voice only got louder. She jumped jobs. First a PR assistant at a fashion house, then campaign coordinator at a nonprofit she barely believed in. She never stayed long, but she always posted photos. Her in cocktail dresses at fundraisers, tagging CEOs she'd just met, adding quotes she didn't write. To our family, she was the one doing well. To the outside world, she was building her network. And to herself, she was winning. What she didn't know, and what no one in the family cared to ask, was that the company she had just joined, Colburn Media Group, had just signed a multi-year transformation partnership with a data infrastructure firm that I owned. She was working inside a system I'd helped design. Her paycheck came from a quarterly budget I approved in silence. She talked about her CEO like he was some distant deity, but to me, he was just a name on a list of equity distributions. I didn't need Chloe to know who I was. But I knew eventually the day would come when someone else would say my name out loud. And that day came at the Glenhaven Gala. I used to wonder if staying invisible made me weak. In my 20s, I'd see articles about founders making headlines, posing on stages with wireless mics and forced charisma. I wasn't that person. I didn't want to be followed. I wanted to build things that ran without noise, that held together when no one was looking. Ashcombe Dynamics became the seed. From that seed, I grew a cluster of companies, each legally distinct, each quietly profitable. I kept my name off the front pages, but never off the ownership documents. By 30, I'd acquired controlling interest in 2 venture funds and co-founded a digital asset protection firm that managed back-end infrastructure for major media groups across the Northeast. One of those media groups was Colburn, a sprawling communications giant trying to modernize their internal systems after a data breach left them bleeding talent and credibility. I wasn't in the room when their executives panicked. I didn't need to be. My CTO was. My legal team was. And when they signed the transformation agreement, it wasn't with a man in a suit. It was with Ashcombe Holdings, LLC. I remember getting the final signatures while eating dinner alone in a Brooklyn apartment that barely had furniture. I still lived small by design. Quiet was control. 2 months after that deal closed, I received an email from Chloe. A breezy, emoji-laced update with an attached flyer. "Hey sis, I just got a job at Colburn. There's a gala next month. My team's helping host. You should totally come." At first, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because life has a strange way of closing circles you didn't even know were open. I didn't reply, not immediately, but I saved the flyer. I started paying attention to her name in the org chart. Chloe Ashcombe, assistant to the communications director, a contractor, not full-time staff, likely through a temp agency or a 6-month PR consultancy. Her title wasn't even permanent. She had no idea how precarious her place was. And still, she acted like she owned the room. A few weeks before the event, one of my advisory team members sent me an internal update. Colburn's new gala theme includes public recognition of major campaign contributors. Should we decline visibility or send a proxy? I read the line twice, then wrote back, "Neither. I'll attend, quietly." That's how it started. I told no one. Didn't book a table, didn't submit a photo, didn't request to be introduced. I just marked the date, chose a black dress that didn't announce anything, and made my way to the venue alone. The gala was held in a museum atrium with ridiculous lighting and ambient string music. Everyone was overdressed and underfed, and Chloe was already holding court near the champagne bar. I saw her before she saw me. She was surrounded by low-level execs and social media interns, talking too loudly, gesturing like someone used to being filmed. She had no idea who was watching her, no idea that the system around her, the screen she used for work, the analytics dashboard her team bragged about, was paid for by the woman she used to call weird, distant, difficult. I could have walked right past her, but I didn't. I gave her the chance to recognize me. She turned, blinked once, then smiled like it physically hurt her. "Mira, I didn't think you'd actually come." Her voice was high-pitched, controlled. She looked at her circle, then back at me. She didn't offer a hug, didn't make space beside her. Instead, she did what Chloe always did, made herself bigger by making me smaller. "She's my sister," she said, laughing lightly to the group. "She lives off the grid, does freelance stuff, super independent, you know?" They nodded politely. One woman gave me a tight-lipped smile. Another glanced at my plain dress like it needed justifying. I didn't respond, because when someone builds their identity by pretending you don't exist, the most powerful thing you can do is wait until the room realizes you built the floor they're standing on. I didn't plan to make a scene. I didn't need to. That was the difference between me and Chloe. She needed the spotlight like oxygen. I only needed gravity, and gravity never begs to be noticed. It just is. The table she brought me to was half filled with Colburn's mid-tier staff. Young men in slim suits, women who spoke in metrics and marketing speak. They greeted me with vague curiosity, clearly unsure if I was someone's wife, cousin, or mistake. I sat, smiled, let the discomfort swell. Chloe played her role well, loud enough to be heard, soft enough to sound playful. Oh, Mira, she said between sips of her third champagne. She's always been so alternative. Doesn't really believe in corporate stuff, right? She looked at me, lips tilted into that performative smirk. I mean, you don't even have a LinkedIn, do you? One of the men laughed too quickly. Wow, that's rare. That's like impressive or terrifying. She's kind of like our family's mysterious rebel, Chloe added. No one really knows what she does. My mom thinks she's in cybersecurity. I don't know. She won't even let us follow her on Instagram. Another round of polite chuckles. I counted the seconds in my head. 7, 8, 9, then... Mira Ashcombe, the voice came from just behind me. Calm, incredulous, familiar. Chloe's smile flickered. She turned and I followed her gaze. Standing there, impeccably tailored, was Carter Hartley, Chief Strategy Officer of Colburn Media Group, the man whose signature was on a multi-year transformation contract I'd authorized, the man who'd spent 3 months begging for extended capital injections after underestimating the migration costs of his own tech overhaul. I stood. Mr. Hartley, I said quietly, extending my hand. Good to see you again. But he didn't shake it. He took it gently, bowed his head slightly, not too much, but just enough that the room took notice. You didn't say your sister was Mira Ashcombe, he said, looking past me at Chloe. Then to the table, his voice now loud enough for every fork and glass to pause mid-air. We work for her. That's when it happened. The freeze, the tilt, the collective instinctual awareness that someone had miscalculated the hierarchy in the room. The man beside Chloe lowered his champagne. The woman across from me blinked 3 times, her gaze dropping to my dress, as if to reevaluate it. One of the junior staffers leaned forward, clearly unsure if this was a prank or a reckoning. Chloe looked stunned. Not dramatic, just glitched, like her mind needed a few seconds to reboot. Wait, she said. You mean, you've worked with her? Hartley's brow lifted. No, I mean for her. Miss Ashcombe is a primary investor in Ashcombe Holdings. That's the infrastructure firm managing our transition pipeline. You've seen the deck, haven't you? Her lips parted. No sound came. And in that silence, the shape of the evening changed. People who had ignored me before now looked curious. Those who dismissed me now tried to recall if they'd said anything regrettable. And Chloe looked like a woman who just realized the glass slipper she'd been bragging about belonged to someone else. I stayed calm, didn't gloat, didn't even blink longer than necessary. When Hartley left, he placed a hand on my shoulder and said, We're glad you're here, ma'am. Let me know if the catering isn't up to your standards. Ma'am. From a man who once had his assistant call my assistant to apologize for late-stage budget overages. I sat back down. This time, no one spoke right away. I picked up my water, took a sip. Finally, Chloe broke the tension with a weak laugh. Well, this is unexpected. I guess you've been busy. I looked at her, tilted my head just slightly. I told you I was in cybersecurity. Then I let the quiet speak for me. After that, everything Chloe said sounded like background noise. She kept talking, of course, trying to string together some harmless narrative that would explain the humiliation away. Something light, something that would make people laugh again and forget that, for a few seconds, she had been exposed. I mean, I always knew Mira was smart, she said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. She's just super private, you know? Never really liked attention. So mysterious, right? The man beside her nodded, but his smile was tight now. Careful. Someone else asked if I was really the Mira Ashcombe who'd funded the New Haven rollout of Colburn's internal migration system. I simply replied, yes. No follow-up, no details, no resume list, just yes. That was enough. From that point on, the air around me changed. It thickened. Every introduction carried weight. People who had brushed past me earlier suddenly wanted my opinion on media models, data privacy, generational shifts in user behavior. Chloe, for once, wasn't the one leading the conversation. She was orbiting it. And the more they asked me questions, the quieter she became. I didn't gloat. I didn't reach for vengeance or pettiness. That wasn't my language. But I watched her unravel, Not dramatically, but subtly. Her posture shifted. Her voice lost volume. She started tapping at her phone, looking for excuses to leave the table. By the time dessert was served, she excused herself to check in with the events team. She didn't come back. When I finally stood to leave, a young man from Chloe's circle walked with me toward the exit. He looked nervous, then said softly, "She talks about you a lot, you know, but I don't think she really knew who you were." I smiled. "That makes two of us." Outside, the valet area was quiet. The night had cooled, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe fully. But I didn't make it far before I heard her footsteps behind me. "Mira, wait!" I turned. Chloe stood there in the marble entryway, heels wobbling slightly, her perfect hair wilting from the humidity. "I didn't know," she said quickly, "about the company, about any of it." I held her gaze. "You never asked." She blinked, caught off guard. "That's not fair. You never talk about your work." "That's because when I did," I said slowly, "you called it boring, or weird, or so techie. You were too busy curating your image to care who I actually was." She frowned. "So this was... what? Payback?" "No," I said. "This was gravity. You just finally ran into it." She didn't respond. We stood there in silence for a moment. Sisters, one exposed, the other revealed. I didn't hate her. I didn't even pity her. But something between us had broken years ago, and tonight had only made the fracture visible. "I have a driver waiting," I said, stepping past her. She didn't follow, and as the car pulled away, I looked back once through the tinted glass, just long enough to see Chloe still standing in that spotlightless doorway, unsure of whether to cry or clench her jaw. For once, she had no audience, and I had no need for one. Chloe resigned 2 weeks after the gala. No formal announcement, just a quietly updated LinkedIn status and a vague Instagram caption, "Time for new beginnings." No one reached out to me directly, but I knew from internal reports that she'd asked to be reassigned, anywhere outside the Colburn system. Our family group chat, usually a stream of photos and passive-aggressive cake recipes, suddenly lit up with curious praise. An uncle wrote, "Didn't realize you were doing big things, Mira." A cousin added a star emoji. Even my aunt, who once asked if I was still between jobs, sent me a voice message choking with pride. I didn't answer any of them. The recognition felt late, unnecessary, and it didn't change what came before. I spent the next few weeks doing what I always did, working in silence, approving budgets, reviewing merger terms, scaling what mattered. But something had shifted. I was no longer invisible, not to them, and not to her. One night, I found a letter slipped under my office door. No envelope, just my name in Chloe's handwriting. It said, "I used to think being seen was everything. Now I think I never really saw you at all. I don't expect anything. I just needed to say it." See. I folded the note once, filed it away. Didn't reply. She had laughed first, but the room remembered the silence that followed. Some people are terrified of being ordinary. Chloe lived her life like applause was currency. Louder meant better, seen meant worthy. I used to wonder if my silence made me small. Now I know. It made me permanent. After the gala, I didn't give interviews. I didn't reply to the family's suddenly respectful messages. I didn't need to. The moment had already done what it was meant to do. Chloe left Colburn quietly. No dramatic exit, no curated post, just absence. And silence this time came from her. Relatives who once forgot my birthday sent messages with cautious admiration. "You've done really well for yourself. We didn't realize how far you'd come." I let those messages sit unanswered. They weren't for me. They were for the version of me they finally believed was worth their time. She sent me a letter, no return address, just my name, in her handwriting. "You never raised your voice, and somehow, you're the one everyone hears now." I kept the letter. I didn't reply. Because that was never the point. I still walk into rooms quietly, still take the corner seat, still listen first. But now, when people say my name, they pause. They measure it. Their tone shifts. Their posture adjusts. Not because I asked them to, because they finally understand what it took to carry that name in silence. Mira Ashcombe. The name they once overlooked, now it follows them home. Because in the end, I didn't rise by shouting. I rose by waiting, until the noise around me ran out of air.